Texas tried to redraw its congressional map to squeeze out up to 5 extra Republican seats. As of maybe an hour ago, a federal 3-judge panel just said absolutely not. 2 judges ruled there is substantial evidence that Texas racially gerrymandered its 2025 map. One of those judges was even a Trump appointee. That's how blatant this was. The court ordered Texas to go back to the 2021 map for the 2026 elections while the lawsuit continues. Civil rights groups argued the legislator intentionally diluted Black and Hispanic voting power, and based on this ruling, the judges seem to agree.
A few moments later.
Tonight, just in the past few minutes, the U.S. Supreme Court will now allow Texas to use a congressional map favorable to Republicans in 2026. This is a big deal for the electoral map come the midterms. The justices granted a request by Texas officials to lift a lower court's ruling that had blocked the state from using the Trump-backed map. The new configuration could flip as many as 5 currently Democratic-held U.S. House seats to Republicans. A final decision from the Supreme Court is expected later.
So big bad news out of the Supreme Court. Yeah, it's not good. They have just upheld the Texas redistricting map 6-3, and the way that Texas pulled this off should terrify anyone who cares about voting rights.
Well, the Supreme Court just ruled that Texas can use their racially gerrymandered maps, and they're lying in our fucking faces about the reason they're letting them do it. Let's get into it. This is the most corrupt court in the history of the United States, and it's not even close. Supreme Court on Thursday, as you can see here, allowed Texas to use their congressional map that will boost Trump and let them get, another 4 or 5 seats. The amazing thing is they're lying about the reason that they're overturning it, and as you can see at the bottom, the court issued a brief, unsigned opinion. They won't even sign the opinion that they're releasing. These fucking cowards.
So Texas just got a green light from the Supreme Court to use its gerrymandered congressional map for 2026. And let's be clear, this isn't a neutral decision. This is a 6-3 conservative-led ruling that directly overturns a factual finding from a federal court that said point blank, Texas likely racially gerrymandered Black and Latino voters. The conservative majority pushed it through anyway.
Boy. I gotta tell you guys, Democrats and liberals are gonna be furious about this news that we gotta talk about. A major win, and I'm talking about a major W for the Trump administration and Republicans going into the midterms, as the Supreme Court is going to allow Texas to use its new maps, okay? Now, these maps were called racist by Democrats and the district court that basically struck down these maps, and it was essentially overturned by the Supreme Court. So I want to react to it because overall, this is great news, but it possibly could backfire, and I'm going to explain to you guys how it could possibly backfire. But just understand that as of right now, it's great news for Republicans going into the midterms. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into CNN cope over another major win for Trump.
Breaking news in our Law and Justice lead, and a major update from the U.S. Supreme Court on that Texas redistricting case. You'll remember Republicans in the state, in an unusual mid-decade review, redrew the maps, the congressional maps, earlier this year. Let's get right to CNN Chief Supreme Court Analyst Joan Biskupic. Joan, what is the latest news from the U.S. Supreme Court?
Very big news, Jake, both politically and legally. The Supreme Court, the conservative majority over the dissent of the 3 liberals, has said that Texas can use the map that it drew last summer to provide potentially 5 new districts that could flip Republican and enhance the Republican majority in the U.S. House. And what they said is that a special U.S. District Court panel that had invalidated this map, saying it was drawn on unconstitutional racial lines, that Texas had actually divided people up by race. This district court had said that, and Texas had come up here and appealed it, backed by the Trump administration. Today, the Supreme Court majority said no, that this map deserved more deference from the district court. The district court should have taken into account a presumption of legislative good faith. That's been a standard that Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Samuel Alito have been really pushing over the years to sort of let states do what they want to do, even if there could be a cloud of racial division there.
AKA, there is no real evidence that the maps are racist. Now, I want you guys to understand the irony here, because Democrats claim that the 2021 maps were also racist, right? So essentially, they want to go back to the previous maps that they said was racist, and they're claiming that these maps are racist, which is why they want to go back to the racist maps that they had before, right? Because ultimately what you learn is that racist just means whatever Democrats disagree with, right? It doesn't actually mean that there's any evidence or proof that the maps are racist. It's just Democrats disagree with it. They don't like it, right? They don't like the map, okay? It doesn't help Democrats. It's bad for Democrats, so therefore it's racist. That is what's going on here, okay? So I just want you guys to understand the irony in all the boohoo whining and crying about this.
So you had the conservative majority essentially now locking in this new Texas map that you remember has triggered all this off-year redistricting throughout the country and at the goading of President Trump to shore up his majority. Let me tell you a little bit about what the liberal dissenters said had happened here. Justice Kagan, writing on behalf of herself and Sonia Sotomayor and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, pointed to the fact that a district court had held 9 days of hearing, combed through thousands of pages of testimony about what had gone on in Texas. And this district court had also put a lot of attention on a letter from the Office of Civil Rights in the Trump administration that had pushed the Texas legislature to draw along racial lines. And the district court had found that indeed that this had been an unconstitutional racial gerrymander, that it wasn't drawn just on political lines, which, Jake, is allowed under the Constitution. You can divide people up based on their politics, but you cannot divide people up based on their race. And that's what the district court said had done there. And let me just tell you what.
Now, again, I want you guys to understand kind of how this works, right? Because when you have certain minorities, like, for example, black folks, who vote for Democrats at a 90% clip, and you're drawing your lines based off politics, which is allowed, right? You're allowed to do that. Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to look racially gerrymandered because ultimately today, if you're drawing lines based off politics, then you're probably going to draw lines that are going to just look somewhat racially gerrymandered just because of the fact that you have certain groups of minorities that vote for Democrats at such a high clip, right? That's just kind of how that works, okay? So the Republicans in Texas, yeah, I think that they have plausible deniability here, 100%.
Justice Elena Kagan said in dissent about that. What basis does the majority have to thus substitute its understanding of the direct evidence for the district courts? The short answer is it has none. So this is the end of the line for this Texas map. It can be used going forward now for the midterm elections, Jake.
All right, John Biskupic, thanks so much. Let's bring in CNN's Jeff Zeleny and also CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. Ellie, your reaction?
Well, Jake, this is going to have major consequences for the 2026 midterms. As the justices appear to acknowledge, this means Texas will get to use its revised map, the new map that would give Republicans up to 5 more majority Republican districts. Now, that's also, it's important to understand, this is not just some procedural stay. Sometimes we see the Supreme Court say, we're just putting it on hold for now. The 6 conservatives in the majority here say Texas likely will ultimately win on this issue. And as Joan said, the disagreement here is this new map a racially based gerrymander? The 6 conservatives in the majority seem to say no, and the 3 liberals in a furious dissent, it's 17 of the 20 pages of this ruling, say, yes, this was a racial gerrymander. It should have been struck down. Let me just read you one thing that I think encapsulates it. This is from the very end of the dissent written by the liberal justices. They write, this court's decision today, guarantees that Texas's new map, with all its enhanced partisan advantage, will govern next year's elections for the House of Representatives. That result, as this court has pronounced year in and year out, is a violation of the Constitution. So you have your 6-3 split. conservatives on one side, liberals on the other, but Texas will get to use its changed pro-Republican map in 2026.
And hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. Democrats, hey, they doing it in California. They do it in their states. There are a ton of states in the Northeast with no Republican representation, right? Even though they have a significant Republican population. So I don't want to hear the boohoo, whine, and cry. I really don't. Democrats have played this game for years. And now that they're getting a taste of their own medicine, I don't want to hear it. I don't care. It's about time Republicans grow some cojones, grow a sack, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we can't let these lunatics take back power and control. So we got to do what we got to do.
And Jeff, the Texas Democratic Party just issued a statement that says, in part, quote, the Supreme Court failed Texas voters today, and they failed American democracy. This is what the end of the voting.
I mean, that's up for the voters to decide. If the voters are so upset about this, they can vote the Republicans out. They can vote the Republicans out, right? The voters gave the Texas Republicans the ability to do it. If the voters don't like it, they can vote, right, to change it if it's that big of a deal. That's how democracy works.
Rights Act looks like courts that won't protect minority communities, even when the evidence is staring them in the face, unquote. This ruling will have huge political ramifications across the country, not just in Texas.
It will. And Jake, the bottom line is this is the best news the White House has had, politically speaking, all week long, actually perhaps all month long. The reality here is this is going to allow what the White House has wanted from the very beginning, these redrawn maps to help Republicans get elected, to help ensure that House majority. What this ruling does not do, however, though, is affect these individual races. These races still have to be won. And this does not change the environment on the economy. This does not change the environment on what voters think of the Trump administration, local issues as well. So what this does is basically reverts back to what the thinking was all along, that the Republicans in Texas were going to have an edge here. Of course, that set off a nationwide, unprecedented series of redistricting rules. California, of course, is drawing it for the Democrats to have a democratically favored seats, if you will. So there is still very much an open question of these new districts here that have been drawn based on the Trump 2024 election alone. Are these truly as Republican-friendly districts as they were a year ago? We shall see about that. But for now, at least, this is a huge sigh of relief for Republicans and a huge concern for Democrats who thought that they had a sort of an upper hand in this redistricting fight. What it also may do is touch off battles in other states, like Virginia, for example. There is a heavy discussion there of changing the lines to favor Democrats. Maryland, perhaps, as well. So it does not end the discussion nationwide, but for Texas, it does.
In LA, the Texas Attorney General, Ken Paxton, a Republican, just said, quote, in the face of Democrats' attempt to abuse the judicial system to steal the U.S. House, I have defended Texas's fundamental right to draw a map that ensures we are represented by Republicans. The big, beautiful map will be in effect for 2026, unquote. The same issue is going through the courts after California voted in favor of redrawing its maps in response to what Texas is doing. How might the U.S. Supreme Court decision impact the Trump Justice Department's lawsuit against California?
Well, Jake, if this decision is applied consistently, it's good news for California. It's good news for any state that wants to change its map, that wants to gerrymander. Important to know, a couple years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court came out with a controversial opinion where they essentially said, we, the federal courts, are basically out of the gerrymandering business. That's for the politicians. That's not for us in the courts. Really, the court's only very limited role, and this was reinforced today, is to make sure there is not a racially discriminatory gerrymander. Now, there was disagreement among the justices today about whether Texas did that or not. But basically what this decision is signaling is that any state that wants to go ahead and change its congressional districts, even mid-decade, like is happening right now, even if it's for partisan advantage, this is really a green light. And heaven knows where this could go with other states that already are underway with their efforts, whether pro-Democrat or pro-Republican, or as Jeff Zeleny says, other states that might want to get in on that action.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, when it comes to California, Republicans are pulling the reverse jujitsu on Democrats, right? They're basically saying, well, these maps in California are racist because they're drawn based off the Latino community, right, who votes overwhelmingly Democrat, and they are discriminatory against whites, right? That's the reverse jujitsu that the Republicans are pulling in California. So we're going to see what happens with that lawsuit. But like they said, I mean, consistently applied, the California redistricting will probably go through. But yeah, I mean, it comes down to people voting, right? And that's how this could possibly backfire, in the sense that with this new redistricting, we really don't know how strong these districts are for Trump. I mean, theoretically, on paper, they are strong districts for Trump, right? This is a stronger map for Trump based off the 2024 election results, as you can see here. Okay. However, if the trend keeps up, which is that Democrats are doing better, they're overperforming, then it can backfire. This is why I stress that the Republicans and President Trump, they're going to have to do something going into the midterms. I'm not as panicked as a lot of people about the midterms, to be honest with you, but I definitely think that Republicans are going to need to rally the base, get people mobilized, get people out to vote, hold some rallies, do the same thing Democrats been doing. Rally up the voters, get people energized. There are plenty of reasons for why the Trump administration can do that. There's plenty of things that the Trump administration can campaign on, and they're going to have to do that in order to make sure that this sticks. Because if voters don't actually really vote the way that they voted in 2024, then that means that Democrats could actually end up with more seats than they had, right, before. That's possibly what could happen. And we don't want that to happen. That's the last thing that we want to happen. What we really want to happen is for the gerrymandering in Democrat states to backfire. We want Republicans to be overperforming in these new districts. And that's kind of the pro and con to, gerrymandering, right? Redistricting, whatever you want to call it. That's just the reality. You can draw new maps, but the new maps are drawn based off the previous election. If things change moving forward into the future in regards to how people vote, then it's a wild card. So, we're going to see what happens. But as of right now, based off 2024, this is a major win. Big fat W for the Trump administration, and big fat L for Democrats. So, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.